It's believed that Confucius told the proverb, "Before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves." Well, in the case of The Last of Us Part 2, you're gonna need close to like 968 graves because man, you basically kill everyone. Hey guys, this is Eric with Pixel Rookie, and I finally finished playing through The Last of Us Part 2, and now that the dust has settled, I wanted to analyze the game's story and the incredible divide I've seen with the reception of Naughty Dog's sequel following up on the amazing story of Joel and Ellie in the original The Last of Us. I think we can all agree that from a graphical, technical, and accessibility perspective, this game was an incredible achievement of what Naughty Dog was able to create, but when you look at the game's story and see the volatile reception that it received online, you see what I would consider a very vocal minority that is vehemently against the game. For me, I thought it was excellent, and I actually really enjoyed the story. Granted, I am biased because I love a dark story, and the original The Last of Us was one of my all-time favorite games. Now, of course, before I go any further, I'm going to try to discuss the entire story on a high level, and obviously major plot spoilers will be touched on. If you don't want anything spoiled, I highly recommend not watching any further. Seriously, get out of here! Okay, with that out of the way, the first thing we need to talk about is the catalyst that triggered the start of the hate for The Last of Us Part 2, the leaks.
Y'all act like you heard of us or something.
Because they have.
Over a month before the game was released, a massive leak came out revealing tons of spoilers around the story, most notably Joel's death at the beginning of the game. People were furious to find this out, and I can understand why people disliked the twist. You play as Joel for 90% of the first game, and you embodied his character for hours and hours and felt the pain he went through as he built his love and father-daughter connection with Ellie. It's hard to see this character that you've grown to love die like this because let's face it, Joel was an awesome character and was very much liked by everyone. Well, maybe except for Abby. Anyways, to make it this far in their story and then you play as some new chick who proceeds to lead Joel to her crew and kills him at the very first act of the game was a really daring decision for the story. But here's the reality of Joel. Like him or not, he was a ruthless killer. Think of the first game and what lengths he went through to protect him and Ellie. He went so far that he murdered a ton of fireflies who are simply trying to create a vaccine to help save the world. I've discussed with people about the validity of the cure and if it would have made a difference if Joel let Ellie be sacrificed, and based on the information and context given to us in these 2 games, I believe that letting Ellie die would have allowed the fireflies to create a vaccine. But that doesn't really matter because in the end, Joel doesn't let her die for the greater good. He bloodies his hands just a little more and then lies to Ellie about it to protect her from the truth. Love him or not, Joel is a vicious character that did anything necessary for what he justified as the right choice, regardless of who it hurt. And well, come to find out, his actions would eventually catch up to him at this point in the second game. The issue with reading the spoilers is that a lot of people, myself included, read these details out of context and other key spoilers. And had those details not been leaked prior to the release of the game, I really wonder how different the perception of the game would be. And the danger of gathering most of your information from an echo chamber of shared opinions like Reddit, Twitter, and YouTube, your entire perception of the game can easily be influenced to dislike the game before you even had a chance to experience it for yourself and come to your own conclusion. And the reception to this leak was received very negatively.
What a steaming hot piece of shit.
And if you go into it expecting to hate the experience because of these preconceived notions, it's going to change your overall experience. Regardless, Joel's death sets Ellie on a bloody quest of vengeance to kill the ones that took away her father figure that she loved dearly. At least that's how I felt as I followed Ellie to Seattle to find Joel's brother, Tommy, who went off on his own to punish those that killed Joel ahead of her. A big complaint that I've seen is that the story's pacing is off and flashbacks are jarring to the story. This is a very subjective topic for me. Revealing information through flashbacks at key points in the game helped to both reinforce themes and to entirely change the context of the story. When Ellie and Dina reached Seattle, I could feel Ellie's rage for the loss of Joel. I mean, she loved the guy and he did everything for her. Between killing off minor characters from the group that murdered Joel while hunting for Abby, who's the main target, there are flashbacks that break up the dark story and fill the gaps between the end of the first game and the beginning of its sequel. Seeing the lengths that Joel went through for Ellie's birthday almost brought me to tears. Do you know how hard it is for a game to pull on my heartstrings like this?
I do okay.
Are you kidding me?
You're welcome, kiddo.
Seeing his love for Ellie and knowing that he's been taken away from her was such a bittersweet moment, and it further reinforced my preconceived notion that Ellie's family bond was severed. As you continue to play, Ellie goes deeper into her dark obsession of killing everyone involved in Joel's murder, getting closer to finding Abby. All the while, flashbacks reveal that Ellie never truly bought into Joel's lies about the Firefly base in the first game.
After you took me out of the Firefly hospital, you said there were dozens of people like me.
You eventually run into your friend Jessie, who followed after you and Dina to help you, and this obsession is even more evident as she continues to recklessly seek vengeance even at the cost of the safety of those that are close to her.
The best way to help Tommy is to go after Abby. You do this, I'm not saving your ass again.
I really hope you make it.
Ellie's gone all in and she's made it too far to stop now.
Because I can make it quick. Or I can make it so much worse.
And this is when you're hit with a curveball. Through another flashback, you find out that Ellie did indeed find out the truth of what happened 2 years prior, and after she forces Joel to confess what he did, she hated him for it.
Don't you f***ing touch me! I'll go back. But we're done.
This information changes a lot of the story. What was Ellie's true motivation for seeking vengeance for Joel when she said she was done with him 2 years prior? What else happened between then and the present? Joel robbed Ellie of her entire purpose and in a sense, completely destroyed her identity. For me, the pacing felt perfect so far, and it only increased my desire to continue playing the game to find out more. At this point, it's the third day in Seattle and you can see the toll that all of this is taking on Ellie's mental well-being until you finally arrive at Abby's destination. The thing is, she's not there. Instead, it's two other people that were involved in Joel's death, and Ellie does what Ellie does best. The issue is, after stabbing Mel in the throat, you realize that she was pregnant and you killed any remaining leads to finding Abby. You can see Ellie finally unraveling at this moment until Tommy finds her, who she's been looking for the entire game up to this point. In her bittersweet reunion, they all prepared to head back home, and even though Abby wasn't brought to justice, the rest of them were, and without any other leads to help them find Abby, it was time to pack it in and leave Seattle. Just when you think things are about to calm down, something happens. Boom. Just like that, your friend Jessie is killed right beside you. Tommy's being held at gunpoint by Abby, and you're helpless to do anything other than drop the gun like Abby demands. The entire game has been leading up to this point. You finally hit the climax of the story. How's Ellie gonna get out of this situation and avenge Joel? But wait a second. Instead of finding out what happens next, the game flashes back 4 years and suddenly you're playing as Abby. What's revealed is that she was part of the Fireflies, and her father was the lead surgeon that was killed by Joel at the end of the first game.
Abby.
No!
Abby, don't look.
Dad! Dad! No!
Remember what I said about preconceived notions? This entire time, you're hunting this person who sought out and murdered Joel in cold blood, but suddenly the perspective flips and you realize how Joel took everything from Abby that day. I thought it was really poetic that throughout the first game you play as Joel, who slowly regains his humanity through the family bond that he built with Ellie, and his death caused Ellie to go on a downward spiral of revenge, putting everything she cared about at risk. But Abby was put into the exact same situation when Joel killed Abby's father and severed that same bond first, which drove her into an obsession of finding and avenging her father's death.
I know all the leads have dried up, but Joel's still out there, you know?
I really like these kind of parallels, and suddenly, her motivation seems surprisingly justified. But hey, she killed our favorite character, so we still hate her, right? Right? After that flashback, the game rewinds back to the first day of Seattle, but now you're playing through the game from Abby's perspective, and you begin to see that there are two sides to every story. Yeah. I get it. It sucks having to play as a brand new character who killed the main character from the first game, and from my discussion with others, they just couldn't get over this fact and had no connection or empathy with Abby. While playing as Ellie, you're on the path of revenge at all costs, making reckless decisions and slowly falling deeper into the darkness. Abby's story is completely different.
I found Joel's brother. He's at a settlement out in Wyoming. It's a lead. I gotta see it through.
She obsessed over killing Joel for 4 years and finally achieved her goal. That was her entire identity, and now that she's succeeded, she seems lost. You're thrust into an all-out war between the wolves and the scars, and you learn more about our complicated relationship with Owen, who's suddenly gone missing. While Ellie's out killing her friends, Abby abandons her post trying to find Owen and make sure he's okay.
All right. Wish me luck.
When you find him, don't hit him too hard.
I'll do my best.
Seriously, watch yourself out there.
I thought it was really cool seeing characters that you've already met while playing as Ellie later on in the timeline. Along the way, she gets caught and almost killed, but she's rescued by two renegade Scar children, Yara and Lev, who are being hunted by their own people.
Cut her down. She's one of them. Lev.
Together, you escape and help them in return for saving your life, but part ways once they're safely hidden.
This area gets a lot of traffic. Whatever shape she's in, we need to get out of here by tomorrow.
We'll be fine.
After finding Owen, you realize he's checked out of the war and wants to search for a lead in Santa Barbara, where there's rumored to be another Firefly base.
It's a lead. I gotta see it through.
They get into a fight and some other stuff happens. Yeah. But ultimately, Abby says that she won't leave with him, and she can't shake the fact that Lev and Yara are left alone, probably to die. She decides to go back to try and save them. Suddenly, Abby's purpose shifts to protecting these kids, and she slowly begins to find redemption through Lev and Yara. Sound familiar? I found myself really liking Abby the more I played through her side of the events leading back to the confrontation with Ellie, and I was anxious to see what would happen when I finally arrived back at that point again. A lot of other complaints I read was how Abby's story was too drawn out, and pairing that with the fact that they completely disliked Abby, people just lost interest in her story. While I didn't feel that way, I can understand some of the issues with the pacing here. A large segment of Abby's playthrough is trying to get medical supplies at a nearby wolf hospital so they can safely amputate Yara's arm to save her life. While the hospital sequence was really tense and a lot of fun, I do think that entire fetch quest portion was a lot of extra fluff for the sake of adding extra gameplay. And I guess you see her relationship develop with Lev as they go to get these supplies, and Abby finds out that the wolves are launching a full assault on the Scars to end the conflict once and for all. So it does help move the overall plot forward, but I just think they could have done it a less drawn out way.
It is a pretty cool segment, though.
Anyways, after successfully retrieving the supplies, returning back to your hideout and amputating Yara's arm, you find out that Lev ran away to go back to their home to try and rescue their mother before the fighting breaks out, so Abby and Yara go after him. This leads up to one of my favorite parts of the game when you run into this nasty sniper and reunite with Manny.
Manny?
You by yourself?
Yeah.
This guy starts shooting at the cars around you to draw the infected near you,
He's luring them to us. Get ready.
which is something that Tommy has you do with Ellie earlier in the game in a flashback.
See that sign there? Red one? Try hitting it. Good way to draw them out of wherever they're hiding.
It was a really cool, subtle detail that confirms your suspicion that Tommy is the gunman. And speaking of parallel story themes that I like so much, Manny gets to share one with Jesse. You and Yara eventually meet up with Lev, who was attacked by his own mother and he accidentally killed her in self-defense, which really felt like it was glossed over a bit since it isn't really mentioned at any other point in the game moving forward.
You did nothing wrong.
Okay.
And while you try to escape the island, war breaks out and you're stuck in the middle of it. Unfortunately, you get caught, and instead of turning in the children, Abby puts her life on the line to defend them, and this is where Yara gets sent to the Shadow Realm. This is the frustrating thing with the long sequence from earlier in the game when you had to go through the hospital to save Yara, only for her to die shortly after. I don't like comparing this game to The Last Jedi, but it definitely reminded me of Poe and Finn's story arc, which felt like it ultimately achieved nothing. I guess the difference here is that Yara killed Isaac, the leader of the wolves. I think that people were thrown off with the pacing because of just how different Abby's plotline is from the revenge plot that you've been building up with Ellie up to that point, but I also thought it was really fun to play through and it humanized Abby for me. After a huge climax with the war between the wolves and the Scars, they find a boat and escape the island. Abby and Lev return back to their hideout in the aquarium, where you find the aftermath of Ellie's destruction. But Ellie didn't realize that she left her map there after Tommy and Jesse found her, which leads Abby straight back to them. Finally, the stories converge back together where their confrontation continues.
We let you both live. And you wasted it.
At this point, I was ready to see what happens, since the only spoiler I really read about beforehand was Joel's death. It was really tense as the fighting began and Tommy got shot too. But for me, the most interesting thing was playing through this sequence as Abby instead of Ellie. I knew I had to fight Ellie to progress the story, but at this point, I didn't really want either of them to win or lose. Of course, Ellie can't match Abby's strength, and right as she's about to die, Dina intervenes but is taken down by Lev. It's brutal, man. Abby's ready to do exactly to Ellie what she did to Owen and Mel.
Abby!
But Lev intervenes and Abby takes the high ground and spares their lives.
Don't ever let me see you again.
Abby and Lev leave. They lay there, beaten to a pulp and almost completely dead, and the game fades to black and transitions to an old cottage in the middle of nowhere. Ellie's with Dina and her baby, living in what seems to be a peaceful life together, probably about a year or so from the previous scene. Things seem calm as you spend time with your child and see the lives that Ellie and Dina were able to rebuild. That is, until you go to the barn and suffer an episode of PTSD.
Come on, little dude.
Ellie breaks down and you realize that this whole thing was just a dream, and you flash back to the theater where Ellie and Dina slowly bleed out and die. It was a vision of what could have been if she wouldn't have pursued this quest for revenge, leaving her and all of her loved ones to die alongside of her. The scream fades to black and the story finally concludes. I'm just messing with you, that last part doesn't actually happen.
Got him!
Ellie and Dina living together with their child isn't a dying vision, it's what actually happened, and you see how Joel's death still haunts Ellie. It turns out that even though he was shot in the head at the theater, Tommy somehow survived, though he's partially crippled and he's been searching for Abby ever since their last conflict. He's finally found a lead and tries to convince Ellie to check it out. Ellie tells him that she moved on, which sends Tommy into a fit of anger. He's no longer physically able to hunt Abby himself and resents Ellie for trying to move past it and not finish what they started. The thing is, she hasn't truly moved on and it still haunts her. As she's about to sneak out in the middle of the night, she's confronted by Dina, who begs for Ellie to stay.
Hey, stop. Hey, come on. We've got a family. She doesn't get to be more important than that. No.
Regardless, Ellie embarks on a journey of revenge once again, and the story shifts back to what's happening with Abby. After what happened in Seattle, she and Lev took Owen's tip and moved to Santa Barbara, chasing leads to see if a Firefly base was really there. They investigate some new information that they found, and to their surprise, the house they were searching did indeed have a hidden Firefly location in the basement. A moment of hope is sparked as Abby was able to connect with someone over the radio who gives her the location of where all the Fireflies have gone to. It turns out they all return to their home base off Catalina Island and tell her to find them there in the dome building off the shore. Of course, in perfect Last of Us 2 fashion, as soon as she steps outside of the house, she's jumped, beaten to a pulp, and captured by a mysterious group of men. Unsure of how much time passed, you switch back to Ellie, who arrived at Santa Barbara and found Abby's sailboat home. That's where she finds the address where you last saw Abby and Lev, so Ellie follows that lead. As she gets closer, she gets caught in a trap and wounded. She's bleeding and hanging upside down until she blacks out for a few hours. When she wakes up, she's found by the same group of men. With the help of a trapped clicker, she breaks free, gets a sweet new silenced machine gun, and finds out the location of Abby, who was picked up by these guys, the Rattlers, a few months prior. You offer to spare the last guy his life if he tells you where their base is, and, well, he gets the Ellie treatment. When she arrives, you find out that the Rattlers are a bandit group that's enslaving people they capture. Finally, after getting past all the patrols, you find out where they keep the prisoners and release them. Abby isn't with them though. They inform her that she's down in the pillars at the beach because she tried to escape.
The pillars?
Head down to the beach. You won't miss it. She's probably already dead.
Ellie's badly wounded but continues pressing forward. She's practically limping to the beach as chaos begins to break out because the prisoners are armed and fighting the Rattlers. When she arrives at the beach and finds the pillars, she's greeted with a very bleak scene. And there she is. Ellie finally found Abby again, but this time, she's a husk of who you played as previously. Abby begs for help and slowly recognizes Ellie.
It's you.
I think at this point, Ellie pities her more than anything and cuts her free. Abby stumbles over to Lev and frees him from his pillar while Ellie just watches. As she scoops Lev up, she tells Ellie that there are boats nearby and they both stumble that way, barely even able to walk. There are 2 boats. As Abby loads Lev into one, Ellie slowly claims the other one for herself. I felt a lot of mixed emotions at this point. Ellie made it this far, and to see what's become of Abby and to know her story from playing her side, I was a bit relieved that she was parting ways with them. Ellie's a bloody mess at this point, and as she's about to let it go, she's haunted with another glimpse of Joel, which prompts her to turn and fight Abby. She's gonna finish what she started so long ago.
I can't let you leave.
Abby doesn't want to fight back and refuses until Ellie threatens to kill Lev.
He's not a part of this. You made him a part of this. Okay. Okay.
So she reluctantly charges Ellie for their final confrontation. This was one of the most uncomfortable fights I've ever played in my life. I didn't want to fight Abby, and I didn't want Ellie to die either. I felt like at that moment, Ellie truly didn't want to either, but to stop the haunted visions of Joel, she forced herself to do it. I think that's why she chose to fight her hand to hand instead of just shooting her. At the very end, Ellie pins her down and begins to submerge her head, and while struggling, Abby bites off 2 of Ellie's fingers. It doesn't matter though. Ellie holds her down in one of the most visceral fights I've ever seen in a video game. Ellie begins to finish Abby by drowning her. The pain on her face, it's awful. It's sad. And then suddenly, another passing memory of Joel appears in her mind, and at the very last moment, she releases Abby.
Go. Just take him.
She breaks down and simply tells Abby to take Lev and go. After all of this, after all that's happened, she doesn't kill Abby. She sits in the water and watches Abby sail away. The way this shot is framed, it's clear that this is a scene from the start menu, in a subtle way, leading you to this moment since the very first time you boot up the game. I've read so many complaints about Ellie not killing Abby, and how the entire point of the game was for nothing, and how it's so stupid that she didn't follow through with it. And before I address that criticism, I want to talk about the final part of the game first. After Ellie watches Abby leave, it transitions to her returning home, focusing on her left hand where she's missing her ring and pinky finger. The journey's finally over, and when she goes inside, the house is empty. Dina was true to her word and didn't wait for Ellie. As she explores the house, everything is packed up except for one room with all of Ellie's belongings. She finds her guitar and tries to play it, but because of her disfigured hand, she can't even play the guitar anymore, which was one of the parting gifts that Joel left her. This is when the realization sets in that Ellie pretty much lost everything on this quest for revenge. But then we're given one final flashback of the night before the beginning of the game, the last night that Joel was alive. Ellie confronts Joel again about him saving her and how her life would have mattered if he let her die. His reply? It's just great.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
I think Ellie realized just how much Joel cared about her, and she finally tells him that even though she doesn't know if she could ever forgive him for what he did,
I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I'd like that.
she's ready to try and heal their relationship. In what should be a beautiful, emotional scene of reconciliation, we instead get the haunting realization that this was the last time that Ellie saw Joel before watching him die. Just as she was ready to try and rebuild her trust and love with Joel, it was all taken away right in front of her eyes. The way the game shares this with you at the very end of the game just hit me really hard, and when it flashes back to the present, Ellie looks sad, but calm as well. She sets the guitar down, grabs her bag, and leaves everything else behind. And that's it. The game ends there. Now back to the issue of Ellie not killing Abby. I feel like if you think the conclusion of that fight was stupid because she didn't finish her off there, you missed what they were trying to show you. That glimpse of Joel was of the flashback they reveal at the very end of the game, the one where she tells Joel that what he did was unforgivable, but she wants to try and work towards forgiveness anyways. At that point, she didn't even really want to fight Abby, but she had the haunted vision of Joel's death pushing her to finish what she started. The moment she sees Joel from the night before, she realizes that the only way to truly let go of her guilt and pain is to forgive Abby rather than taking her life. Everyone else that was involved was killed, and what did that get Ellie? Nothing more than severe PTSD and memories that will haunt her for the rest of her life. Killing Abby at this point won't do anything to fix what's been done. Instead, it would just repeat the cycle with Lev hating Ellie. I think Ellie finds some peace at the end of the game. Even though she didn't kill Abby, she got the closure that she needed to end her quest for vengeance. She lost so much and it was time for her to let the hatred go and try to move forward with her life. She was finally able to begin her healing. On top of all this, after the credits finish rolling at the end of the game, the start menu scene is different. The boat that you saw is now on shore with a domed building in the background, just like the one the Fireflies told Abby to look out for, and you can see a storm passing through the sky with the warm sunlight breaking through. I thought this subtle conclusion to Abby's story finally making it to the Fireflies base was a really cool way to give you closure to her side of the story. In conclusion, I really loved The Last of Us Part 2, and even though it wasn't the sequel a lot of people were expecting, it really was a continuation of Joel and Ellie's story. And what initially seems to be your classic revenge story, by the end of the game you realize that it's so much more than that. It's not just about vengeance. It's about recovering from the trauma of loss and finding healing through the brokenness. At the beginning of the game, Joel gives Ellie her guitar and sings, "If I ever were to lose you, I would surely lose myself." When Joel freed Ellie at the end of the first game, it caused a ripple effect of hatred and vengeance because of his love for Ellie. You see Joel's lyrics become Ellie's reality as she loses practically everything she loved hunting after Abby. Seeing the two of them together for the few times we did in this game were some of my favorite moments, but his actions had consequences. I love the way they juxtapose this story with Ellie's descent into darkness through revenge with Abby's path of redemption, and how I think they both found peace in the end of their broken stories. Some people didn't enjoy Abby's side of the story, but for me, it was an amazing experience, and it was very satisfactory to see that the destination at the end of her journey was back to the Fireflies. And of course, all this is just my opinion. I'm sure if you hated the game for its story or other reasons, my perspective probably won't change yours. But the game impacted me so much, and there's such a strong divide on the game, I just really wanted to analyze the story with you and talk about why it had this effect on me. There are a lot of other criticisms about the game, like the plot being driven by coincidences, Abby and Lev both potentially being transgender, decisions that people don't think are rational to their characters, and probably a lot more. Who's the good boy? Oh no. But these things didn't really bother me, and this video is already way longer than I thought it'd be, so with all that said, love or hate the story, Joel said it best in this scene.
I know you wish things were different. I wish things were different. But they ain't.
I'd love to hear your thoughts about the game's story in the comments and hear why you loved or hated the game. If you liked this video and you want to check out some narrative stories I've done with other games like Kenshin Rimworld and more, I'd love it if you'd subscribe and check out some of my other stuff. With all that said, special thanks to all my patrons who are helping support my channel. I really appreciate it. And as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good one.
Yeah.